Dunkley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today, in what may be my last speech for this term of Parliament, depending on when the Prime Minister decides to call the election, I want to talk about a vision for rebuilding our economy, for coming out of the COVID pandemic, a vision that takes into account everyone in our society, but particularly works to redress the undervaluation and the underappreciation of the care economy and the people that work in it, not of all of whom are women, but who predominantly are women. And I want to note that I've benefited greatly from reading the per capita discussion paper put out in, I think it was last year, but which the author Emma Dawson says, and I concur with this 100%, that as we rebuild our economy in the wake of COVID-19, we have the opportunity to fix broken systems and to rethink what we value as a society and what kind of country we want to be. The per capita paper argued for a care-led recovery, and it was written last year, which focused on the things that really matter to Australians: health and well-being of their families and communities, the time they have to spend with one another, the security of their work, and the recognition of the value we find in caring for one another. And if those things aren't at the heart of the vision for what the country looks like as we come out of COVID and the years and decades in the future, then we're doing a disservice to men and women in our community. We know that women during COVID were the most likely to lose paid work and were most likely to bear more of the unpaid but essential work at home as we went through essential but very difficult public health restrictions and lockdowns. And we know from recent ABS data that women are more likely to be underemployed than men, wanting more work but not able to get it. Recently I spoke with my constituent Amy, who lives in Seaford, and who is a self-employed architect. Amy has 2 young children. She and her fiancé work from home and did so before the pandemic. But because of the industries they work in, they were not classified as permitted workers during lockdown. So it meant that they couldn't access childcare for a large portion of the last 2 years. Someone had to look after the children, the young children who could no longer go to childcare. And like in so many families in my community and across the country, that role fell to Amy. Now, Amy is not unhappy about that. She's not complaining about that. But the reality for Amy and many women is that to care for their children, she had to give up work, which, and I quote, was heartbreaking for me. It has been devastating to watch my business slowly die. Due to my situation with no access to childcare, I had to turn business away as I could not guarantee when I would be able to work again. And Amy made the observation to me that so many others have, but which sadly it seems that the Morrison government hasn't heard or doesn't understand, that the necessary health response to COVID, the lockdowns and restrictions, disproportionately impacted women and particularly women with children, and that still hasn't been properly addressed. And particularly women that were sole traders and missed out on both state and federal support for their businesses, and they had to stop working. I couldn't put it any more clearly than Amy did when she said to me, and I quote, "I'm concerned about the flow-on effects of lost wages, lost super, and lost opportunities for women with children as a result of COVID." In her recent address to the Press Club, the indomitable Sam Moyston, wearing, I think, her CEW hat, because she has so many hats, put it like this: "We are now living with what Professor Elizabeth Hill describes as a great weariness and whiplash for women right across the country. The weariness and emotional havoc of paid and unpaid work during lockdown, the whiplash of disproportionate jobs and hours lost during COVID, where 55% of the jobs lost during April 2020 were women, and this year 60% of the job losses across Australia between June and September were jobs lost by women." We know that feminised industries are paid less than male-dominated industries. We know that there is a gender pay gap. We know that that has been exacerbated by what we've gone through, and we deserve a government that will deal with it, and that will be an Albanese Labor government that I will be proud to work in.